So this originally started as a partner identity talk, and then, you know what, we should talk in general about what kind of pools of identities extend systems or groups of system or an enterprise. And I'm going to say that we're going to pick the top three, at least for this talk will be internal, customers, and partners. And some of those break down, right? You got individual customers, you got business customers, you got partner companies, right? Companies could be super small or they could be enterprise size. And so those actually overlap a little bit with B2B customers. And then you've got partner people and partner machines. And that's where we integrate two companies with APIs and software talks to software. A lot of times those identities are managed completely separately from human partner identities. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And really, when we say identity, there's certain limits to this. We're not talking about implementing authorization rules. We're really talking about how the identities are managed and stored, and maybe what their group assignments are so that you can do authorizations against it. And are they self-managed? Are they managed by the company? Are they managed by APIs or some kind of process for it? So in a lot of ways, this diagram came out of another diagram at the bottom of the page. And basically the idea is it's customers, partners, and internal. And it turned out when I started talking about customers, if I thought of B2B customers or customers that are companies, the management of those customers in a lot of cases looks a lot like partner management, and yet we keep them in completely different identity stores. And it makes you wonder if we really should do that. And then internal users, there's all kinds of internal users, but sometimes you have an outsourced relationship like a call center or independent contractor companies, that work. And they're sort of internal, but they're sort of also partners. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then kind of the growth hanging off of partners is this machine to machine. We do a lot of data interchange between organizations that are partners with each other, and when I say partner, I also mean like a supplier, right? These should be suppliers and partners. And so, but let's look at that, right? If we look at kind of how the people are managed, then I don't know if you can read this actually. That may be good or bad. So if we have application services in the middle, right? And you can go to the blog and you can click on this diagram, make it as big as you want. If we have the application services, the core of the company in the middle, I was arguing that the blue, the orange, and the red really represent the three different user pools, right? In a lot of cases, they're their own domains, but except partners are weird because they have like subdomains. So customers, if you're in a social media or individual customers, B2C, they basically are domainless. They're all just part of the customer domain, and they just have access to what they have access to, and there's no way to grant them extra permissions, really. They can't grant each other permissions to do stuff. There's no such thing as a group of customers. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then you have a single domain for your internal users. So you kind of have a customer domain and an internal domain. And then on the partner side, it gets a little squirrely because it turns out the partners all have their own domain, their own people trees, right? And so the question is, how do we manage that? Essentially, the partner domain or the partner identity systems are multi-tenant, multi-domain sometimes because they let the partners manipulate the permissions and those within limits. And so in this case, the two blue on the top and the bottom represent actual partner domains, the companies that have multiple users that are managed as an entity, as an enterprise. And then you kind of have small outfits that are, the mom and pop shops that are one or two people. And they basically need to manage all their identities on the system, on your system, some kind of console you've got, because they don't have any integration capability. All right, so let's go look at a couple of these. I'm going to take you to a couple tables in this page. So for people, individuals, I actually, started talking about individuals, and I realized the thing that got me angry is the way all the social media companies and game companies and these other people, they, like my phone backup service, it turns out they have no ability to create groups of people in any meaningful way, right? Everything was done as an individual. The account and the username and what you're allowed to do is all the same, right? And you kind of see this a little bit in bank accounts, right? The bank account, you sign up, you have access to your bank account, which is cool, and that makes sense. And in a lot of cases, you weren't able to give anybody access to the bank account in any delegated fashion. I'm going out of town and I need somebody to write checks, right? It didn't really support that unless the person's name on the account, and that's good for legal reasons. So in those cases, those are like contract-linked accounts. Two people are in a bank account. They each can have their own account. Those accounts are essentially linked by contract to that one bank account, but they're not really linked, right? It's not a domain. They're really individuals. Companies really have struggled with this family individuals, right? And that's because they created these standalone accounts and there was no notion of a true account. It was, here's a login and that's the account, right? And really what you want is a group of people, a group of logins are tied to an account. And so you see some of this in the broken family plans. I've seen a couple that are starting to get better. One gaming company in particular has thought through family accounts, right? There's kind of only one login, but they still have sub people's accounts. And you see this a little bit on some of the streaming, but it's really not an account, right? Those are mostly personas and not actual permission-driven accounts. They're just kind of personas. And a lot of times those are really just preferences. So if we look at B2B, I'm going to skip B2B for right now. Business-to-business customers, those would be businesses that are customers of other business, and that's because they feel a lot like partners. We're going to talk a little bit about partner IDs here. So partner is really going to be its own talk, and there's a bunch of weirdness in partners, right? And it's because partners come in different sizes, and the systems you plug into have different capabilities. They've gotten a lot better, the systems have. So let's do the partner system here, which is that one that says partner. And that's a poor label for that column. It really represents a system with a standalone user ID pool and permissioning. And you see this a lot of older software. It just basically, you logged in and you added a bunch of users or whatever to it, and it had its own identity platform. And so it was managed internally. You might be able to do SSO to talk to it, but basically you had to pretty much provision the accounts in that thing. Those are the worst. Anything that's standalone identity pool, just dump the vendor, right? And that's because you really need the ability to onboard and offboard people transparently, and the partners need the ability to do it. So we're going to skip that one because it makes me angry. And we're going to go to small company and enterprise, right? And so partners that are small companies, they just don't have an IT shop. They basically need a console for everything, or they need a help desk, right? So their identity platform for a partner platform, like I'm a corporation, I got partners logging in to get data. It's probably going to be my own account structure, right? You're signing documents, a lot of those, they just make you create accounts in that signing system to control it or whatever. I'm not picking on any signing system. I just use that term because I was thinking of it. And so sometimes those small companies will actually use their social accounts. It's interesting. Small companies may not be domain bound for their partnership, whereas enterprise will be like, no, everybody's got to use their company account, partner company account. Whereas a lot of small companies, people still use their personal email accounts to support the company as a partner, right? Very different feel. And the permissions for that company are all in some GUI. And there's like one super user and they can bring accounts in and out of the system, right? And it's really kind of weird. It's multi-domain, but it's not really a domain-based. It's sort of virtual domain-based inside the partner platform, right? And I'm going to say always, when we're doing modernization, we really want MFA and self-service for all of these. Anything that doesn't have a self-service platform, like password resets, anything else, you are just making work for yourself. On the enterprise side, the partner platform, in a lot of ways, will integrate. And you got two levels of integration. You can, it basically represents their domain. So like if I'm foo.com, that's a catering company for the hotel, there's basically going to be a foo.com org inside the partner platform, and we'll do delegated admins, and then those people, that company will be able to add and unadd and remove people and give them permissions as it goes, right? And there's kind of two versions of that. One is they use the GUI anyway, and the other is A and B. They basically take their existing permissioning system that's in-house and they bridge it into our partner system somehow, either through a live link or they just do a regular dump of permissions. And that way our system has the same permissions that they want. This enterprise one is anytime you can do a link from one company to the other for setting permissions and enabling and disabling accounts, that's the best. The biggest hole in these partner systems for the standalone one called partner, which I apologize, or for small companies, somebody can leave the company, and if you don't remember you added the account, there's a major security risk, right? And then on the last column, we just have the machine-to-machine platforms, and the only thing I was going to say there is basically these are the forgotten stepchildren of security, and in a lot of cases, they're not integrated with the people partner platform. and they tend to be standing off and off on cul-de-sacs. There's a lot of risk in these, and I think the biggest improvement is to start federating these machine-to-machine APIs back into the partner system. So the last piece of this, since we're pretty much out of time, I created this. You can't see it probably, but basically it was, hey, kind of what are the overlapping features of the different, and this is, I didn't, machine-to-machine's not on here. And it was sort of, hey, these are sort of the primary characteristics of these different systems, and when they're in one that's shared, you know, like some of them are kind of dumb, but a lot of times people do internal users, and they do individual customers, and partners are the last thing they think about. And they do partners the worst because they did it all embedded in each of the systems rather than building a real partner integration because they didn't think it was necessary. So you can look at this diagram at the bottom, but basically the idea here is we have a few different kinds of user pools, and you should think of them all as first-class citizens, not afterthoughts, and treat them with the same security risk and the same policies. And we talk about a couple ways to do that in the blog article. Have a great day.